بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما وعملا وهدى وتقا ورشادا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم فقهنا في الدين وعلمنا التأويل. اللهم إنا نعوذ بك من علم لا ينفع ومن قلب لا يخشع ومن نفس لا تشبع ومن دعوة لا تسمع. نعوذ بك اللهم من هؤلاء الأربع. أما بعد، فحياكم الله جميعا في الدرس الثاني والثمانين في شرح متممة الأجرومية في علم العربية، المؤلف للشيخ محمد بن عبد الرحمن الرعيني أبي عبد الله المعروف به الحطاب، المتوفى سنة 54 و900 للهجرة، رحمه الله رحمة واسعة وأسكنه فسيح جناته. وما زلنا نحن نتدارس مسألة التنازع في العمل. ومسألة التنازع في العمل كانت قد أشكلت علينا في الدرس الماضي. It was we were or I particularly was unable to explain it in the best manner in the last درس because I had some إشكالات, some issues, some doubts with regards to it. However, alhamdulillah, just after the درس ended the other day, I found one of my annotations on Alfiyat ibn Malik that when we studied with our Sheikh Muhammad Tayyib in the hadith. So there was one little ta'liq, one little comment, one little annotation that I had put that alhamdulillah solved the issue. Now let us just let me just go you all through this issue so that we can just remember where the ishkal actually occurred. The ishkal occurred in the following examples. We said that when we have two amils that are competing for one ma'mul, they both are seeking the same ma'mul, then only one of them can be considered the real amil, and the other one has to do its amal in the dhamir. The other one has to do its amal in the dhamir. Which one will be the amil? Both can be considered the amil bil ittifaq, bil ijma'. Any one of the two can be be considered as the amil. However, there is a kind of preference of Kufiyin, and there is a preference of Basriyin. The Kufiyun, they prefer that the second one, or they prefer that the first one is the amil, and the second one will be the muhmal. Muhmal means something that is not the amil. So to say why is the first one the amil? Because it has come first. لسبقه. As for the Basriyin, they say that the first one is the muhmal, which does not do the amal, and the second one is the real amil. Why? Because لقربه, because it is nearer to the ma'mul, nearer to the ma'mul. Now, as it is evident in the examples above, قام وقعد أخواك. So the Kufiyun, they considered قام the real amil. Why? لسبقه, because it comes first. And they considered قعد the muhmal. Muhmal means something that is not the amil, and hence it will be doing its amal in the dhamir. So we had to put a dhamir along with it, and we did not have to put a dhamir with qama, because the fa'il of qama was akhawaka, even though qa'ada also wanted akhawaka as its fa'il, but we did not allow it because we said the qama will be the amil in akhawaka, and qa'ada will need to look for its own ma'mul. So that's why it went after the dhamir. So that's why we had to add the dhamir into it. Right. Next. ضربني وأكرمته. Now ضربني wants Zaid as the fa'il, and أكرمته or أكرمته wants Zaid as the مفعول به. But because the Kufiyun, they consider the ضرب, which has come first, it is more worthy of doing the amal into the ma'mul. Hence they said that Zaidun will be the fa'il for ضربني, and أكرمته will have to work into a dhamir, will have to suffice with some kind of a dhamir. It cannot be considered the amil for Zaidun. And likewise, مر بي ومررت به. Now مر بي, the marra is looking for a fa'il, and مررت به is looking for an ism majroor. So because the Kufiyin, they consider that the first one is the one that is worthy of being the amil, they said that Zaidun should be the fa'il for marra, and مررت به, it has to work in a dhamir, work with a dhamir. As for the Basriyun, they said that the second one, which is the aqrab, which is nearer to the ma'mul, that is more worthy of being the amil. Hence they said qama wa qa'ada akhawaka. So they made قاعدة the عامل for أخواك, and they said that the قامة will have to work in a kind of a ضمير, work on a ضمير, or يدوس عمل in a ضمير. Likewise, أكرمت وضربني زيد. أكرمت is looking for a مفعول به, and ضربني is looking for a فاعل. Because ضرب was closer to زيد, they said that زيد, let's make it the فاعل for ضرب, and أكرمت, it will have to work on a ضمير. However, they did not allow it to have a ضمير. They did not allow it to have a ضمير. They said it can only have a ضمير. The first عامل can only have a ضمير if it's ضمير of رفع. If it's ضمير of رفع. And it cannot have a ضمير if it's the ضمير of نصب, or if it's the ضمير of جر. Which is why in the third example, we did not say مررت به, we just said مررت ومر بي زيد. Why? Because if the ضمير is مجرور, we cannot have it. It is not, they did not allow the first عامل to work on a ضمير. They did not allow the first عامل to work on a ضمير if the ضمير is منصوب or it is مجرور. طيب. This is the خلاصة of the مسألة. The كوفيون, they say that the first عامل is the real عامل, and the second one will have to work on a ضمير. They allow the ضمير of رفع, نصب, and jar to come with the second عامل, no issues. The Basriyun, they say that the second عامل is the one that is worthy of being considered the عامل in the ma'mul, and hence the first one will have to work on a ضمير. However, they only will allow the ضمير of رفع, and they will not allow the ضمير of نصب and the ضمير of jar. So far, is the خلاصة of the مسألة clear? We'll go into the reasoning why they do so, but so far is it clear how the Basriyin and the Kufiyin they treat the mas'ala? Is it clear, Barakallahu Fikum? يا إخوان الحمد لله. طيب, little bit clear. نحتاج where did you have an إشكال? Where are you having an إشكال? Okay, let me just quickly go through it again. See, if you consider the first one the عامل, second one will have to work in a ضمير. Okay, this is clear. There is one, we have two عاملs here, right? One will be considered the معمل. معمل means the one that is being made the عامل, معمل. The other one will be considered the مهمل. مهمل means that is not being considered the عامل. So the معمل, the one that we are doing the إعمال of, that we are making the عامل, that does not need a فاعل, that it already has a فاعل in the اسم ظاهر. But the مهمل one, that needs a معمول. So we say we make its معمول ضمير. We make its معمول the ضمير. Now some عاملs they need a مرفوع, sometimes they need a منصوب, sometimes they need a مجرور, right? So if in case of the second عامل, if the second عامل is the مهمل one, you can make it, because it is not going to work with the اسم ظاهر. The اسم ظاهر will go with the first عامل, right? أخواك will be the معمول of the first عامل. So you have to give the second عامل also something to work on. You will give it a ضمير, whether it's ضمير of رفع or نصب or jar, anything it requires, you will give it. However, according to the رأي of the Basriyin, the second عامل is the معمل, it's the real one, and the first عامل is مهمل. It does not work. So the second عامل, its requirement of a فاعل or a مفعول or anything that it wants, it's fulfilled. So what will you give the first عامل? They said that just like in the previous case, we used to give the عامل that is مهمل, we used to give it a ضمير to play with. So we will give it a ضمير, however, only in case of رفع. If it is mansub, if it's a mansub ضمير that it is looking for, like أكرمته is looking for a nasb, a ضمير of nasb, right? We would not give it to it. And likewise, if it is looking for a ضمير that is مجرور, in case of مررت به, then also we will not give it the ضمير of jar. Also, we would not give it the dhamir of jar. Is this clear, inshallah? Right. Now, if it's clear, then we go back to the two questions that we asked. We said, why are we looking to drop the dhamir in the second scenario, in the Ra'i of the Basriyin? The answer to that was to avoid having a dhamir return to something that is mentioned after it. Why? Because the dhamir is actually supposed to be mentioned after it is, its ism or its ism zahir has already been mentioned before in the sentence. Just like we say, جاء زيد فأكرمته. جاء زيد فأكرمته. عرفتم? So Zaydun comes first, then we use a dhamir. That's the asl. But we cannot say جاءني فأكرمت زيدا. طيب جاءني فأكرمت زيدا هذا or you cannot say على سبيل المثال يعني أكرمته وجاءني زيد. Why? Because the dhamir is now being used before Zayd has already been mentioned in the sentence. Always in any language you use the pronoun after the ism zahir has already been mentioned. You would say مثلا I saw Zayd, he is a good boy. But you wouldn't say I saw him, Zayd is a good boy. You would always use the pronoun after the noun has been used. Now, is this something that you agree with? Right. In Arabic, there is, however, one exception to this rule. And that exception is that you can use a dhamir before the ism zahir if the ism zahir that it is referring to is in the state of rafa. If it's in the state of rafa. An example of which was فأوجس في نفسه خيفة موسى. فأوجس في نفسه خيفة موسى. Now here, where is the usage of dhamir happening? لنفسه. طيب, there is a ha of jar in the word نفسه. طيب, this ha is referring to whom? Which word? Whose nafs is this? Musa. But where has Musa been mentioned? Before نفسه or after نفسه? After. طيب. Now this is going against the basic rule that the dhamir should be mentioned after the ism zahir. However, in this case, it is allowed. Why? They say it is allowed because Musa here is in the state of rafa. Is in the state of rafa. And they mention a qaida here. يجوز عود الضمير على متأخر mean that comes afterwards, comes later. لفظا, in terms of the wording, لا رتبة. However, if so it comes afterwards in terms of the wording. But when you come to its rutba, the rank of the rafa is higher than the rank of the nasb and jar, or the rank of the tartib of a jumla is that you mention the fi'l and the fa'il, then the maf'ul bih. So whenever, if you look at any jumla, then the marfu' is always mentioned, or the general rule is to mention the marfu' before the nasb and before the jar. So they give this, the ism marfu', they give it a higher rank. They give it a higher ranking. So they say, because it has got a higher rutbah, so even though it is mentioned after the dhamir, but in this scenario, it is permissible. In this scenario, it is permissible. It is not mubtada muakhar, it is the fa'il of فأوجس. أوجس موسى في نفسه خيفة. أو أوجس خيفة في نفس موسى في نفسه. It's the fa'il of أوجس. Because it's in the state of rafa, they said it is permissible for the dhamir to refer to it, even though in terms of the wording it's coming later. But because it's a fa'il marfu', it's in the state of rafa, its rutbah is high, that's why we give it this exception. Okay. On the other hand, I'll give you an example where this exception cannot be given. We discussed this before as well. وَإِذِ ابْتَلَى إِبْرَاهِيمَ رَبُّهُ. Right? If it was said outside of the Quran, ابْتَلَى رَبُّهُ إِبْرَاهِيمَ. ابْتَلَى رَبُّهُ إِبْرَاهِيمَ. If it was said outside of Quran in this way. Now here, can you tell me the i'rab of Ibrahima? Ibtala, tested. Who tested? Rabbuhu, his Lord. Whom did he test? Ibrahima. So, ibtala fi'l, fa'il is Rabbuhu, Ibrahima is maf'ul bihi mansub. طيب. The rutbah of mansub, is it a high rutbah or is it, does it come after the marfu'? After marfu'. Marfu' is a higher level. Even in terms of the way we put the sentence, the general principle is to mention the fi'l, then the fa'il marfu', then the maf'ul mansub, or any kind of majroor that comes after it. So even in the tartib of sentence, the marfu' comes first, and then the mansub or majroor, right? So in terms of its rutbah, the mansub comes later. Now, if we said in this sentence, ibtala rabbuhu Ibrahima, where is there a dhamir being used here in the sentence? Yes, where is it? In Rabb. طيب, there is a dhamir here. Now, the dhamir is referring to whom? Rabbuhu, whose Lord? Ibrahim. طيب. Now, here the dhamir is returning to, or it's referring to, a word. يعني الآن الضمير, let me just put it in Arabic. الضمير هنا يعود means it's referring to, it comes back to, it's returning to what? على متأخر. It's متأخر, it comes later. It comes later. Does it come later in wording, or does it come before in wording? In terms of the wording, is Ibrahim coming after the dhamir or before the dhamir? In terms of the wording, in the second example, it's coming after. So I can say على متأخر لفظا. In terms of the wording, Ibrahim comes later, right? So it's متأخر لفظا. Is it also متأخر رتبة? And it will be said that the rutbah, first comes the marfu', then comes the mansub majroor. So is it متقدم رتبة أو متأخر رتبة? In terms of its rutbah, rank. A mansub word, in terms of its rutbah, is it متقدم? Does it come before? It's متأخر. So متأخر, it's متأخر لفظا ورتبة. In both terms, it's متأخر. Okay, and this kind of a situation or scenario, وهذا لا يجوز. هذا لا يجوز. It's not permissible. What is permissible? What is permissible is the following. يجوز عود الضمير على متأخر لفظا لكن متقدم رتبة. The thing that we just mentioned before as well, in case of فأوجس في نفسه خيفة موسى. Here Musa was متأخر لفظا ولا رتبة? Tell me. Musa here is متأخر لفظا, or is it متأخر رتبة? فأوجس في نفسه خيفة موسى, it's متأخر لفظا. But in terms of its rutbah, is it متقدم or is it متأخر? In terms of its rutbah, its rank, is it متقدم or is it متأخر? It's متقدم. Hence, is it allowed for the dhamir here to refer to Musa? Yes. طيب واضح ممتاز. If this is clear, then we can. I need to erase this. Okay. Now, oh, no, now, if this is clear, then we can move on to the second question. First, I hope you understood that why are we trying to يعني drop the ضمير in مررت and أكرمت. Why? Because the ضمير cannot return to something that is متأخر لفظا and رتبة. So if you had used the word أكرمته and the ha would have been returning to Zaid and referring to Zaid, then this would have been يعني it could have been problematic. Could have been problematic generally speaking. Okay. Now here there is another issue that Zaid here is marfu'. Zaid here is marfu'. So we could have mentioned the dhamir. We could have mentioned the dhamir. Right? Likewise in marartu bihi and marra bi Zaidun, we could have mentioned the dhamir. Right? So what is the reason that we are dropping the dhamir here? They said that the dhamir of rafa is an umda. It's an essential component of the sentence. Okay? It's an umda. So we have to mention it. While the dhamir of jar and nasb is a fadlah. Fadlah means it's something that the sentence can do without. And hence, even though if you did mention here akramtuhu wa darabani zaidun, even though the dhamir would have been going back to something that is marfu', but they said because the dhamir is the dhamir of nasb, and in marartu bihi, the dhamir would have been the dhamir of jar, we can do without it. It's a fadla, hence it's supposed to be omitted. It's supposed to be omitted. If this was the answer, why we omitted the dhamir from akramtuhu and marartu bihi. Because you could have said that this is just like فَأَوْجَسَ فِي نَفْسِهِ خِيفَةً مُوسَى. Because Musa was marfu', we were allowed to use the dhamir in نفسه. لكن ماذا قالوا؟ قالوا no. In this case, we would drop it. Because it's the case of تنازع. Or there فَأَوْجَسَ فِي نَفْسِهِ خِيفَةً مُوسَى, there is no تنازع happening. There is no dispute happening. But when the تنازع is happening, then we will يعني avoid the ضمير of نصب and jar. ضمير of نصب and jar with the first عامل. What is the reasoning that we provide for that? The reason that we provide for that is that the ضمير of نصب and jar are فضلة. فضلة يعني something that the sentence can do without. And as for the ضمير of رفع, then we have to mention it as we did mention it in قام وقعد أخواك. What is the reasoning for that? Because the ضمير of رفع is عمدة. عمدة means an essential component of the sentence. Okay, let me just repeat this again. One could have said that isn't this similar to فأوجس في نفسه خيفة موسى, where in the نفسه there was a ضمير that was used and that was referring to Musa, and it was allowed because Musa was in the state of rafa'. So why don't you allow a dhamir in the state of why don't you allow a dhamir in the sentence akramtu wa darabani zaidun? Because zaidun is marfu', so why don't you say akramtuhu wa darabani zaidun? And the dhamir would be referring to Zaid. We will say there is a difference between the two. The ayah does not involve tanazur in the amal. The ayah does not involve any kind of tanazur in the amal. However, in case of akramtu wa darabani zaidun and marartu wa marra bi zaidun, there is tanazur in the amal that is happening. And hence here we cannot apply the scenario of فَأَوْجَسَ فِي نَفْسِهِ خِيفَةً مُوسَى. Okay, why did you drop the dhamir off? We said because the dhamir of nasb and jar are fadla, that's why we dropped them off. As for the dhamir of rafa', then it is umda, and hence we cannot do away with it. Hence we had to mention qama wa qa'ada akhawaka. Fine. بقي الآن سؤال واحد. See, we gave the answer of this question here. We said, why are we only dropping the dhamir of nasb and jar and allowing the dhamir of rafa'? They said the dhamir of rafa' is an umdah, while the dhamir of nasb and jar is a fadlah. Okay, so initially, what was the reason we wanted to drop the dhamir? Our initial motivation to drop the dhamir was the fact that we don't want it to refer to something or return towards something that is mentioned after it. We generally wanted to avoid that. Okay, but in case of rafa', we did not avoid it because the dhamir marfu' is umdah, and in case of nasb and jar, we avoided that. طيب. The only ishkal that remained was that in case of the ra'i of the Kufiyin, the same ishkal can be placed. Now, can you tell me what the ishkal can be in the ra'i of the Kufiyin? And the same thing that you are trying to avoid in the ra'i of the Basriyin. And what is that thing that you want to avoid? Which is the answer to the first question. I just want to hear from you. What is the thing that you want to avoid in the ra'i of the Basriyin? Using dhamir, or initial thing that you want to avoid is the dhamir returning to something that is mentioned later. Right? That's the first thing that you want to avoid. Then, why only the dhamir of nasb and jar? Oh, because that is fadla, so we could do away with it. But in case of rafa, we were forced to use the dhamir of rafa because it's umda. Right? Isn't it the same ishkal that can be used against the ra'i of the Kufiyin as well? Wherein they are using qama wa qa'ada akhawaka, and the alif in qa'ada is returning to akhawaka. Okay, we will allow that because it's dhamir of rafa, and because the Basriyin, they also say it's umda. That's fine. But in the second and third examples, darabani wa akramtuhu zaydun, and akramtuhu has a ha, and this ha is referring to whom? ضربني وأكرمته زيد in the رأي of the Kufiyin. It's a maf'ul, yes, but this damir is returning to whom? Zayd, ممتاز. طيب, isn't Zayd also mentioned متأخر? Isn't it coming after the damir? It is. So, just like we mentioned in the first question, remember, why are we looking to drop the dhamir? To avoid having the dhamir return to something that is mentioned after it. Why are we only dropping the dhamir of nasb and jar and allowing the dhamir of rafa? Because the dhamir of rafa is umda, dhamir of nasb and jar are fadla. Exactly same ishkalat can be placed against darabani wa akramtuhu zaydun. In akramtuhu, the dhamir is returning to something that is mentioned after it in terms of wording. Why? Okay, is it a dhamir of rafa so that you cannot drop it? No, it's a dhamir of nasb and it's fadla. So why aren't you dropping it? Same goes in the next example. Marra bi wa marartu bihi zaydun. In marartu bihi, the ha is referring to whom? Who is this ha returning to? Zayd again. Okay. Isn't the dhamir we mentioned before the ism zahir? Yes, so that is problematic. Okay. Is the dhamir a dhamir of rafa so that you cannot drop it? No, it's the dhamir of jar, and jar is fadla. So why aren't we dropping it? But it'll still be marfu, or will it be changed to Zayd? No. Zayd, just let Zayd remain the way it is. When we talk about umda and fadla, here we are talking about the dhamir. لكن قاعدة the ضمير is ضمير of رفع. قاعدة ألف is فاعل ضمير متصل مبني على السكون في محل رفع فاعل. إن أكرمته اسم مفعول به لأكرمته. ضمير متصل مبني على الضم في محل نصب مفعول به. إن مررت به ده is الضمير متصل في محل جر. Or it's majorly because of the harf jar. So right now we're not focusing on Zayd. Zayd, just let it remain marfu or mansub, whatever it is. But right now, the umda and fadla debate, it's happening because of the mahal of the dhamir. If the dhamir is marfu, then we say it's umda, so we cannot drop it. If the dhamir is dhamir of nasb, like in akramtuhu, or dhamir of jar, like in maratu bihi, then we can drop it. Why? Because it is fadla. Is this clear? طيب. So let us write this question here. So why aren't we? Why aren't we? Sorry. Dropping the dhamir of nasb and jar in the examples of al-Kufiyin. Aren't they also returning something mentioned later? And isn't it also returning to Zaid, which is mentioned later, mutaakhir lafza? So the answer to this is we are not doing so. لا نحذف ضمير النصب والجر في أمثلة الكوفيين. لماذا? This is the very important point. That is the تعليق I had written from my sheikh, which helped me understand this مسألة. لأن زيد وإن كان, even if it is, even though it is متأخرا لفظا, even though it comes later in terms of the wording, which was the initial ishkal, and the question when we said, why are we looking to drop the dhamir? So that we avoid the dhamir referring to something that will come after it, that is mentioned after it. So وإن كان متأخرا لفظا لكنه في نية التقدم. However, the intention of using it is متقدم. لكنه في نية التقدم. في نية التقدم. What does this mean? This means, this is the very most important point here. What does this all mean? This means that even though we are using it in this way, ضربني وأكرمته زيد, this is the way it is being used. This is the reality. But the niyyah is, the niyyah of using it, the intention of using it is as follows. ضربني زيد وأكرمته. This is a niyyah. This is our intention. Because the ma'mul, because we are considering the first one the amil, so the ma'mul can go with the first one. The ma'mul can go with the first one, and then we can mention the second amil. وإنما الأعمال بالنيات. نعم أحسنت. طيب, why can't we apply this in the examples of the Basriyin? Because in the examples of the Basriyin, ضربني is the amil, the second one, or the qa'ada is the amil, the second one. So you cannot mention akhawaka first and then mention the alif. You have to couple akhawaka with qa'ada. And hence, there is this ishkal, and here the intention is exactly in the same order as the sentences, because the real amil is the second one. So you have to use a dhamir with the first one. But since in the ra'i of the Kufiyin, you're making the first one the amil, it will, the niyyah that you have, the intention that you have is to move the ma'mul here, and then you can mention qa'ada, qama akhawaka wa qa'ada. Does anyone have any issue with the sentence قام أخواك وقعدا? قام أخواك وقعدا, or ضربني زيد وأكرمته. No one has any ishkal with this. The ishkal was when you use the amil with the dhamir before أخواك. So you said here, no, the niyyah is to use it قام أخواك وقعدا. But the same cannot be said with the sentences of the amthila of the Basriyin. Here, قعد أخواك are together. And qama, which was supposed to be used with the dhamir, is coming first. So we cannot say that no. Our niyyah was to use it in the following way: قعد أخواك وقام. So this kind of a ta'wil, this is too much. So that's how they came to this conclusion, or that's why they did not use the dhamir of nasb and jar with in the amthil of the Basriyin. However, they allowed it in the amthil of the Kufiyin, because even though Zayd is متأخر لفظا لكنه في نية التقدم. لكنه في نية التقدم. Is it clear now? It would need some ta'ammul. You would need to think over it a little bit again. But this is just to understand why we are using the dhamir in some places and dropping it off in other places. We need to have consistency. So that consistency can only be justified if we have a reason for not dropping it off in the amthila of the Kufiyin. Alhamdulillah, this was a very difficult bab, but Alhamdulillah, this was this one ta'liq that I found that Alhamdulillah was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it easy for me to understand this mas'ala after that. طيب ننتقل الآن إلى باب التعجب. باب التعجب, what's the meaning of تعجب? What's the meaning of أتعجب من كذا, أعجب من كذا? تعجب يا إخواني, it means to be astonished or amazed at something. Here it's used in the meaning of amazement, to express your amazement at something, that you are amazed by it, and how amazing this is. Not necessarily on the positive way. Sometimes you're astonished or shocked or amazed by the negativity of something and how bad something is. So it's akin to the usage of how in English, and when you say, oh, how big is this thing? How big is this thing? Here, are you asking a question or are you exclaiming that this thing is very big? When I say this sentence, how big is this thing? Am I asking a question? I'm asking, and I want you to tell me how big is it and what's the size of it? Or am I exclaiming that, oh, this is very big? Hi, Shabab. We're exclaiming that this is huge. How huge is this building? Or how tall is this building? Or مثلا, how beneficial is this book? Or how مثلا, kind is this person? All of these are asalib or styles of exclamation. Here they do not involve asking questions. You're not interrogating, you're not inquiring that how exactly what the size of it is, or how kind a person is, what are the units of kindness. So this is not what you intend. Now, this ta'ajjub, or this expression of amazement, it has two sighas, two styles. You can express the same meaning in two ways. You can use the template of ما أفعل زيدا. ما أفعل زيدا. And in place of أفعل, you put whatever trait you are amazed by. So if you are amazed by something's greatness, you will say ما أعظم هذا. أعظم in place of أفعل. أعظم, how great it is, how big it is. مثلا ما أكبر هذا, how big it is. If something's very small, ما أصغر هذا. If something is, let's say, someone is very generous, ما أكرم هذا. For example, if you are looking for مثلا something that is very beneficial, or kitab is very beneficial, you say ما أنفع هذا الكتاب أو ما أنفع الكتابة. You understand? So whatever trait that you are amazed by, you will put it in place of أفعل. In place of the فاعل, you will replace it with the three root letters of that particular trait. ما أعظم، ما أكبر، ما أصغر، ما أنعم، ما أسمع، ما أبصر، هكذا. طيب، قال نحو ما أحسن زيدا. يعني how ما أحسن زيدا, how will you translate it? حسن, good or nice or good looking. It depends what context you're using it. Hasan is something that is good and nice. Something can also be used in the meaning of beautiful or handsome. So how will you translate ما أحسن زيدا? In English, you want to exclaim. How beautiful is Zayd? Even though it sounds weird, but نعم. How handsome is Zayd? نعم. طيب. وما أفضله. How will you translate that? Fadl is virtue. So you can say ما أفضله. How virtuous is Zayd? How virtuous is Zayd? ما أعلمه. How will you translate أعلمه? ما أعلمه. This is related to his knowledge. How knowledgeable is he? Very good. And you will not use a question mark, rather you will use an exclamation mark. طيب. How knowledgeable is Zayd? How virtuous is Zayd? How good or how handsome or how beautiful is Zayd? Like this is the way you will be using it. So maybe you can try using different traits for different things and apply this. Yani if you want to use it for someone who's ugly, very ugly, and you want to say to your friend, yani, how ugly are you? Astaghfirullah. So you will say ما أقبحك. ما أقبحك means how ugly are you? والعياذ بالله. طبعا this is not allowed to say, but I'm just kidding. This is the story behind, they say, why Abu al-Aswad al-Du'ali, why did he uh, put forth the principles and the qawa'id of Nahu? They say that this was the reason because he heard his daughter saying ما أجمل السماء. She said ما أجمل with a dhamma. She said ما أجمل السماء. So Abu al-Aswad al-Du'ali, he thought that she's asking a question. So he said نجومها. He said its stars are the most beautiful. So she said ما أردت هذا. I did not intend to say that, or I did not intend to ask that question. Rather, يعني إنما أردت التعجب. I only intended to exclaim and express my amazement at the fact that the sky is so beautiful. She wanted to say how beautiful the sky is. But because he used it with the dhamma, ما أجمل السماء. So Abu al-Aswad al-Du'ali thought she's asking a question, so he said نجومها. So they say when he saw his daughter making this mistake in Nahu, that's when I think he came to Ali radiallahu anhu. There are different stories behind it, why he put forth these qawa'id of Nahu, or where did it start off from. So this was the very first beginning of it, and when he saw the daughter making mistakes at the endings of the word, and she could not use the uslub of ta'ajjub correctly, so he came up with the idea of forming this branch of knowledge, Nahu, so that people do not make mistakes when it comes to the endings of the word. Right. Now comes the question that, okay, we are using this uslub, but what is the i'rab? What is the reality of the words that are used here? What is the ma here? What kind of a ma is this? What is the af'ala and what is the i'rab of Zaydan? So the Musannif, he mentions one of the best opinions with regards to the i'rab of ma af'ala Zaydan. One of the best opinions. He says, as for ma, we will consider it mubtada. Ma will be the mubtada. But what is the meaning of this ma? This ma is in the meaning of يعني شيء ما. شيء ما, something, in the meaning of something. But شيء عظيم. when you use it as a nakira, see, there is a kind of a ma that is added to, you can say, strengthen the trait of nakira on something. Like, for example, you say, shay'un ma, or kitabun ma. Yani you say kitabun ma means some book. If you said kitabun, it would have meant a book. If you want to say some book or something, you can say shay'un ma fa'ala. Something unknown, some book unknown. مثلا you can say قلم ما انكسر, some pen, some unknown pen got broken. You see? So when you add this ma, it adds to the ibham. It increases its nakira, or the trait of nakira. So he says that the ma here is being used in the meaning of shay'un azim, something great, something great. So ma, something great. Af'ala is fi'l madi, and af'ala means like it's having an effect, having an effect. And like just like akrama has an effect. And ahsana zaydan, yani it made him hasan. Akrama made him kareem, or afdala made him fadil. A'lama made him alim. Huh? Something is making him have that trait. Something azim, shay'un azim. أفعله will be the fi'l madi, and the fa'il of it will be the ضمير مستتر تقديره هو, and it will be returning to ma, ma. And the ism mansub after it, which is the thing that you are amazed at, the person you are amazed at, that will be the maf'ul bihi, والجملة خبر ما, and the whole jumla is فعلية, the jumla فعلية will be the khabar of ma, be the khabar of ma. So here, if you're saying, for example, ma ahsana zaydan, ma is the mubtada, ahsana will be the fi'l madi, its fa'il will be ضمير مستتر تقديره هو, and زيدا will be the مفعول به. ما مبتدا, أحسن is the fi'l, its fa'il is هو, and this هو is ضمير مستتر returning to ما. زيدا is the مفعول به, and this whole sentence will be the khabar. Okay, and literal translation of this will be something great as beautified Zayd. And the translation in terms of how we use it in English, we will say how beautiful he is, how good he is, how nice he is. But this is like the literal translation of how we are interpreting ma af'ala Zayd. واضح? Inshallah, the next uslub, أفعل بزيد, because it's a little complicated. Inshallah, we'll cover it in our next درس بإذن الله تعالى. نقف هنا ونكتفي بهذا القدر، وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وآله وصحبه أجمعين. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك، نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت، نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.